Welcome to Burn the Map. Today we are talking with Allen Martinez, brilliant, smart guy that's gotten his hands dirty on building AI. You can really tell he's one of the founders at Noble Digital, and he's written a book that's around the brand experience AI operating system. If you're in and deploying agents into production, which is actually a lot more rare than it sounds, is definitely worth looking up. It's kind of talking about deploying and what those systems for AI need to look like for enterprises to really avoid a lot of the landmines and the pitfalls and really benefit from having a cohesive kind of AI system that isn't just like, hey, we deployed a chatbot and then it runs into issues. We don't know what to do with it. He actually has a very good system for deploying something that's closer to a buildable, trackable, evolvable system that ensures that you have the items and the architecture and the infrastructure in place to do it and do it well. So give it a listen. Fascinating guy. Go check him out. Noble Digital and the Brand Experience AI operating system. And enjoy the episode. Mr. Allen Martinez, founder and author, BX AI OS, right? Brand Experience AI operating system. I get it's a backhanded compliment all the time where people go, I don't know what you just said, but it sounded really good. And I go, okay, I think that's a good thing. It made sense in my head. I think you operate at another level, Allen Martinez. And
really? Okay.
I understand it. I read I started reading Brand Experience AI operating system, and it's fascinating because, man, I come from a background that was pretty heavy on regulatory experience, like CPG and stuff like that, where like you had to launch one was ConAgra, and if you didn't launch a $20 million business in its first year, it was considered a failure because it's the grocery category. You had to make money. So, we'd work on brands like Healthy Choice and Orville Redenbacher and stuff like that. And we had to have our numbers straight before we launched things. We were very, very, very careful about everything just because of the stakes there. And, for those that haven't yet read it, the Brand Experience AI operating system is basically about managing the complexity and the black boxes and all of the governance that comes with AI. And a lot of it is inherently, and I won't say deliberately obfuscated, but it's not a bug, it's a feature,
Right.
I have people asking us about deploying like generative engine optimization. How do I get my results inside of those LLMs? And kind of, I'm just like, man, are they going to leverage the black box nature of that to make sure that they're getting paid for those mentions?
Right.
And I talk to people about like the challenges that they're going to face in deploying AI and stuff like that. And I feel like, I'll tell them like things you need to watch out for. No such thing as it just works. Never, ever. It's hard to do. It's a behavior change. And I've spent a long time trying to make sure that there wasn't a black box there, right? So doing semantic tracking of LLMs, making sure that they are checking and the underlying data that they reference is preferably actually not coming from memory. I'd rather use an LLM to describe a result than have it generate a result and describe it because you can't check its reasoning. Man, and the amount of money that's at stake is no joke. And you've kind of touched on all of these things. And I do think MIT came out with a study recently that like 95% of AI deployments have no ROI. And
that's right.
When you read a little bit deeper, you find out, well, like, okay, that's the headline, but a ton of them didn't.
They never did it right to begin with. It was never set up right. They were never set up for success, and they were never going to get ROI, and they never will get ROI until they have an operating system internally, period. End of story.
And about 85% of the projects we work on, or even the product that we build, is because the client's data centers and trust centers and governance is held together with duct tape. There was actually a decent amount of our growth, like just going, all right, their data is not going to be in order. We need to append enrichment services and stuff like that and track the weights of their impact on lead scoring and churn and all that other stuff so that, because they're not going to have it ready. Let's just have it ready ourselves and we'll use ours. How the hell did you get to this thing? Because it's one where I just go, people should read it and they won't yet know why. And then they'll be glad that they read it.
That's right.
Because the dollars and cents are real and they are myriad and of large magnitude. I'd like to know about what you've been working on to come to the conclusions, because
Well,
this is significant.
yeah.
This is about how to deploy AI with real process orientation. This is like
Yeah.
Six Sigma black belt deployment of brand
Yes.
AI.
Correct. That's what it's supposed to be.
How'd you come to there? And that was the longest intro ever.
Thank you. On that note, thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Sure.
I came up through execution and not strategy, right? So I started in film and commercials first, but I learned about systems thinking when I was at Art Center College of Design in Pasadena. And Linda Weinman taught me. Linda Weinman, who sold lynda.com to LinkedIn for $1.5 billion. If I were smart, I would have continued on that path. But what happened was I did a piece that had special effects and won some awards and was at the MoMA in New York City, still is on Permanent Archives. And Tarantino and his producer caught wind of it and invited me to direct commercials at A Band Apart. Cool. And so I learned a lot. I worked with the largest blue chip brands out there and learned how to take strategy and turn it and execute it and turn it into money, right? Basically conversions, right? From there, like I think it was around 2012, I saw the writing on the wall and I realized instead of working for these guys, I'll work for myself. I opened up Noble Digital. While I was there, I got trained by a Razorfish strategist, so I got deep into that. But I think for what you're asking about as far as this book, I think it was like Steve Blank. It was like, the business model canvas. I love building blocks, and we're talking about like, this all came out of helping a client over a year ago with, looking for the building blocks and realizing like they're all scattered. Yeah. They're there, but they're everywhere. They're not in a cohesive, formulaic kind of way in a system. And I'm like, no one's done this yet. And I'm being lazy. I really don't want to write this book. I made the system for myself. And then as I wrote it, I'm like, they're going to ask all these questions. So I'll write something. And as I wrote it, people have to, there's too much unawareness and it has to be resolved. Right. Mm-hmm. And I've been playing with AI since 2020. I used the GPT API before it came public to do marketing intelligence. I built a whole school for learning an ESL course using generative AI, characters and all that kind of stuff. So I'm really deep in this. I'm loving all this stuff, and all that thinking and processing helped me. Is kind of like where my background came from. It's how I got to design the largest Shark Tank exit in history. They were in a downward spiral, and I turned them around in 18 months, got to 100 million in revenue, and then they exited for 300 million. Damn. Well, so not because I'm some marketing genius, because I understand systems thinking. Because I was able to take this plane that's up in the air and work on the engine while still in flight, so to speak. And I'm used to kind of coming into chaos and fixing it. But I'm here to say, I want you guys to be able to avoid this whole phase. It's not necessary. And I'll just remind everybody in the early 90s, late 90s, the internet came and website design was ridiculous, right? And IT used to own it. And if you wanted to change a logo on 50 pages, you'd have to change it 50 times, right? All that nonsense, because there was no CMS structure to help. This is how stupid AI is right now, as far as I'm concerned. I'm a designer. I'm going to be like, this could be 1,000 times better, and it should be 1,000 times better. So my background as a director taught me coherence, because if you think about it, the bottleneck of a film set is the director, but that's by design. That's not the problem. That's actually by default. That's how it's supposed to be, because you're running everyone's opinions and points of view through the one filter of in this case, it's story, right? Mm-hmm. Well, what's the story of your brand? So that's going to, people talk about employee experience. They talk about user experience. They talk about customer experience. What's inside of that? What surrounds all that is brand experience. Brand experience is the biggest lever you have. And it covers everything that any customer is going to touch, as well as any employee is going to touch. So I'm just used to working with the chaos and having to make sense of it. And I think the director is the single point of coherence, and that your AI has to be that as well eventually. That's the Autre method. And so I'm looking at how companies deploy AI. Marketing has a tool, sales has a tool, the support built a bot, and each one is optimizing for its own metric, which are going to eventually collide. And if you're listening, you don't know what a collision is. I'll let Dan explain that probably better than I could. But the collisions are coming if you're not already feeling them. And maybe, Dan, you can tell me a story from your own clients of what their experience. I'm curious.
So for those that don't, because preaching to the choir on this, when we say brand, everybody thinks, not everybody, but most people think logo.
Yeah.
What they don't realize is
visual identity, right?
Your brand and your company as a proper noun, the way that you would think of your brother or sister's last name. You're an entity. and you have a proper place in their memory. So when we say brand, we're talking about a cohesive communication picture. And when I talk to brand, marketing, sales, support, whoever, I get the same tone, the same message, the same consistency.
Yep.
If I do that and I do that well, a really cool thing happens. People stop choosing. They just go straight to you. There's a decision fatigue in everybody's life, something like 700 decisions before 11 a.m. that you have to make. And what you want to do is be, I need a Kleenex, not I want a tissue. I need to go Xerox this, not I need to go make a copy of this. If you can get your brand so consistent, you become a part of someone's brain and their decisioning hierarchy, and they no longer think who they choose, they just buy. So, it is absolutely captured in cap tables. You can actually go to companies and measure it. When they dominate that brand and when they build that cohesive picture, it's a big deal. But when you mess it up, you cause a collision, and it's like putting fish hooks on all of your marketing materials and snagging it on your customers' fingers. It causes massive psychological friction. And you're talking about when, if you have the same agent, but oftentimes sending the same messages, it's like marketing, sales, and support have not found a good way to work from the same sheet of music. It's very difficult.
And I'll just add something. And the way we're talking about branding kind of sounds like how an enterprise with a lot of money might talk about it. And that's a fair point. But let me just counter and say that we're now at a point where you don't have to be enterprise level to think that way. In fact, you need to start thinking like an enterprise thinks about brand, because you can leverage brand at that level, at that scale. And so I think what we should talk about is the 3 gaps that kill all AI projects, right? Every time, right? And I studied like about 100 case studies, most of them negative, a few were positive, because it's so new, right? We're still at the beginning. But
there's plenty of one and not many of the other.
That's right. So the 3 gaps are the governance gap, the identity gap, and the accountability gap, right? So the first one, governance gap, is critical. That's the guardrails. The question isn't just like how did the AI follow the rules? The deeper question is, are your rules set to capture the full identity of what AI can do, or while containing the blast radius while something goes wrong, right? So most companies have maybe some guardrails, or not at all. Most don't really. And so this means AI can promise anything, and you don't want it too controlled and too tight, because it is a probabilistic system, and that's part of its magic. It's not software that's deterministic, right? But you also don't want it so wide that it can create chaos as well. So the art is really the calibration, and that's really what the book gets into as you go deeper into it. The second point is the identity gap. Does your AI sound like you? And I would say this is the one probably that I hear the least from, as far as solution providers actually really. And again, it doesn't come from a provider. This is internal. Like, who are you? This is like you would do a rebrand of your company. You're going to have this brand strategist come in, and they're going to ask you, your mission statement, your values. Like, these things used to be PDFs that you would hide in a folder, and only the brand strategist would slap you in the hand and say you're off brand, and no one would know what the hell he was talking about, right? And now that's all machine learning for the AI to understand. Oh, this is what you're about. Great, I can do that. Like, just you. Right, so we're talking about an IAML document. At the end of the day, it's turning into Boolean logic. It's turning into code for machine, but it has to come from leadership. So my strategy is really picking the brains of all leadership and some of their maybe top performers in certain departments, and translating. And first of all, getting the richest amount of qualitative data from that whole institution, and then turning that into documentation that I can hand over to my team to actually implement. Right. And so that's the identity gap is going to be really important, because, vibes don't scale. Be helpful, but don't overpromise. Isn't architecture. It's a suggestion. So you need rails in the system. Otherwise, you're going to get in trouble. So the third thing is the accountability gap. So right now, this is a black box, and we need to make it a glass box. So how can you prove what happened? Right. And so when a regulator asks, why did your AI deny that customer, this or that? If you can't answer in a few minutes, you're going to be probably pulling from Slack threads and emails and old chats, and you're going to spend weeks to months doing reconstruction instead of just pulling a retrieval, right? Big difference. The point is, you don't want to go through the drama. And by the way, once you go through that drama, guess what? You have another one the next day, because you still haven't fixed the actual problem. So if you don't get all these 3 gaps done at the same time, you'll be playing whack-a-mole, because you don't need one. You don't fix one and go, we'll do the next one later. No, you need them all at once, holistically, and they need to perform right out of the gate. Yeah. And that's why 70% of AI projects fail, and they fail to produce business outcomes. It's not that the tools don't work. The tools, like Dan's platform, is amazing. I got to see it the other day. What a great platform. But the problem is, like, how are they going to have that connect with the rest of their system?
Yeah, it's a big problem. And like even for the vendors as well, it's hard to find clients that will oftentimes even allow you to do it. Like we found a way, like our patent is for stuff that is basically, we think we found a good way to build the same sheet of music that can be shared across teams, right? And even just to get and push that into the organization, you're talking about like, all right, are they in budget planning mode? Is it the right time of year?
Right,
Do they actually have a pain point with that? Maybe they already have a solution that they really, really like. It's like, it may really work, but it also doesn't work with anything else. It's pushing a string in many cases where you're just going like, trust me. A lot of the documents that oftentimes get shoved in that drawer, man, like personas.
Exactly. It's time to leverage them. It's time to use them. But here's where it's interesting. Like, and I'll give a story of this from the book, which is like the house without a view. A friend bought a house in the mountains, and it was this amazing cookie cutter in this nice subdivision. You know, everything worked perfectly. The interior was awesome. The plumbing was fine. Electricity was fine, except for one small problem. The view of what should have been a 14,000 foot, mountain, gorgeous mountain range was instead a white wall, right? Except for a little kitchen, a little bathroom window that was, on the side. And why is that? Because, the contractors came and built the house like a machine. There was no architect to say, wait, why don't we have a glass wall here to see the view? And what is that view in this situation for AI? It's the brand. You're paying for the view. And so your brand is the view. And that's what you should be paying for. And so when I talk about these three gaps, this is just table stakes. I'm trying to get you to have this platform so I can start to build on top of that platform. And that what goes beyond that is actual brand advantage. Because you have to realize that when you start doing things right, when you start getting everything in alignment, you're going to start having predictive intelligence, because it's going to start to see years past what we did before. Stuff you and I are going to forget. Like, oh, we did that thing 5 years ago. And we're going to be like, what thing? And we're going, oh yeah, I forgot about that. That did this and this for this kind of people. Why don't we redo that? It's like the AI is going to make suggestions that maybe people would have forgotten about, or people maybe left or on leave or whatever. Like all that gets thrown out the door the old way. The new way is that this entity inside your company gets more and more powerful. So the ROI case for this is like through the roof, right? If you're a company of at least 50 employees or more, like it's kind of obvious what's going to happen. And let's not even get into the fact that there'll be 1 person or 5-person AI companies built from bottom up from AI that maybe will be competing with like blue chip companies, right? Because we're in that, right? That's where we're at right now.
I think it'll happen. I mean, you saw the earnings, and the Claude did the announce of their co-working tools and basically tanked all those SaaS and everything else.
Right. I was watching Bloomberg. SaaS is plummeting. Not all SaaS, but like simple SaaS like HubSpot, Monday.com. And that makes sense. I mean,
over the last year, just going, holy crap, writing's on the wall, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah. What does that all mean? What it means is that I think the most important thing right now is point of view. What are you trying to do? What do you want to be is more important now, because you can do it, right? And I think, when I do a branding engagement, I'm always asking the client, like, okay, before we start, like, what are your 5-year goals? Like, so I understand the trajectory of what I'm designing for. Sure. I think I would change that to 10 or 20-year goal, because that 10 or 20-year goal in the old world is now maybe a year or 2 away, or maybe 5 years away.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. I didn't see it going that direction. That's clever.
Completely differently. It's very different now.
It's very clever. A real cool kind of benefit of the premise too. Like, again, like building a system that can, again, with those AI systems, you're talking about as close to real time as makes no difference, right?
Yeah.
Like, people say real time, but they often mean like, look, give it to me within an hour and I'm happy or whatever, right? Being able to return those results that quickly and explain your decision making and tie it to a business outcome.
You're not waiting for the quarterly report in 2 months. It's like now.
No. It's becoming the expectation that like I have, we have some of ours, governance and stuff can slow down your LLM. Right? You have agents counteracting agents, making sure does that link work and stuff like that. Is there any indicator of a hack in the prompt or something like that?
Right.
There's a bunch of those tools, and they can slow it down like 20-30%, but you're still talking seconds, single digit seconds,
milliseconds. Yeah,
exactly. Like, no, way too long. And I'm like, you can have a dumb one in 3. You can have a master's degree level one in 7. You don't want to wait 7 seconds? They're like, nope, I don't. It's like,
and you know what? It's funny you mentioned that, because my actual document I delivered to the team to build, Well, they were doing like 50-page like instructions. I'm like, that's long. I mean, it's only a second, but it's still long. And the whole point is to compress that and to make that like a brief almost, right? That at a machine reading brief. And
Yeah.
suddenly you have the speed. Think about it. Also, you're not burning tokens for that extra thinking. Now,
Yeah.
a few seconds might mean nothing, but a few seconds times 10,000 interactions per day times a year, and suddenly, yeah, it does actually add up. So all this is optimization from the start. Yeah, you're
If
starting
you
with that.
haven't gotten that surprise multi-$1,000 token bill yet, it's coming, ladies and gentlemen. It's coming. I made
And
one last month.
let's not forget the fact that AI is going to become experiential. I mean, it is experiential now. We already have the tools to have conversations with it. Obviously, the tokens are more expensive than the writing ones, but that's all going to come down. There's going to be an employee or a customer who's experiencing this. And what is that going to sound like? Well, again, my background as a director, you're thinking about casting an actor. You know how much time and energy is put into finding someone like Flo from Progressive? And if you think about Flo, I mean, they maybe pay her $1 million a year for all this commercial, but they spend $1 billion a year on her presence, the media behind it, everything around it is they spend a lot. And there's a reason, because a brand wants a persona that you can bring to life. That's even better. What have we been doing with websites for the past 20 years? We've been trying to create this beautiful digital wallpaper. Well, how about an AI that's personal? That's good. That's a whole other level and a lot closer to speaking with a representative versus like a website, which is just like a kind of a passive experience.
Absolutely. Come from that space, had to hire those spokespeople, worked with clients working on influencer marketing, which is like spiked and then also tanking simultaneously because people are realizing, well, I can just build my own that doesn't necessarily get a DUI on the weekends, doesn't have that risk. I know how they're going to act, like there's so much more risk, and they are the dollars associated with it are no joke. I had one of my former associates, great friend and stuff like that. But did you remember the weird Dr. Pepper guys? And they had this little tiny rock star Aerosmith looking guy.
Yes.
He was behind that campaign. And I remember that him telling me stories about like he'd be in the executive meetings displaying like, hey, here's the new market. That's this guy. If you haven't seen it, the guy just looks like this weird Aeros, and it was all bizarro type.
Yeah.
He's like the executive who just put their head down and go like, I can't believe we're doing this. And then he launched it, and it was like the most successful campaign they'd had in like 20 years, blew the doors off all their sales. He's just like, you
have to understand, as a director, we would get agencies or whoever, like someone big would sell this to some big brand. And then, you know what they do? They come and knock on our door and say, how are we going to do this? Meaning they sold an idea and didn't even know how to, and a month later, we're supposed to produce this, right? So like that, I'm used to that. Like that's normal. AI is not that much different as far as the chaos that has to be figured out. But look, if you start going down to first principles, you start going down to data primitives, all kinds of things, like you just start to look at the building blocks, something you can start to build up. And it just becomes clear, and again, all this is around brand advantage. It's the center. It's loyalty from consistent experience, pricing power from trust, the ability to charge premium because customers don't know exactly what they're getting every time. And that consistency is going to keep happening because you have your AI in alignment with your brand. It's a no-brainer. We're not talking about a percentage of ROI. We're talking about multipliers. We're talking 4 times, 10 times, and more. So when you hit that point, you're not competing on price anymore. You're not renting attention with ad spend. You built a moat, right? And the companies that get this right, they don't just avoid the disasters. Again, that's the bare minimum. They create surplus. They create margin, speed, confidence, and the kind of institutional advantage that compounds every quarter. So I think most companies are still building houses pointed at those blank walls, so to speak, like in my analogy, and I help them build the view.
Man, it's so fun, but it's so hard too. I mean, so much of this is organizational change management, getting everyone to play nice together in the sandbox despite that.
This is why I bring leadership, and I want them to bring their champions, but you know who else I want in that room? I want the saboteurs too. I want them to tell me to everybody, like, look, AI is not going to work, and here's why. Great, let's talk about it. I'm not judging this either way. This is your company. You have to live with this, but let's have this conversation. And I'm happy to overcome those objections if I can. And most of the time I can, because this is not going away, and your competitors are trying to figure it out. And I think whoever cracks this first is going to be winning very soon, right? And I think the ones that don't, not only will have to catch up, but the ones that get ahead are going to jump ahead so far that it's going to eclipse what your competitor, it's going to eclipse the other brand.
I very much rethought my job a few different times because people go like, "You're an AI guy." I don't have a PhD in data science. Like I do and have done behavioral science and branding and stuff like that. And I've done a ton of product management and product leads in software spaces. So I've had to deal with it a lot. And the job kind of evolves as the market does. But like at this point, I'm just like, I think people pay me to stay 6 months ahead of them. Like they're literally just.
That's a fair. I like that.
Yeah. They're like, just please let me know what's coming around the pike so I don't necessarily have to hit it head on. I give them a little bit of extra leeway, and a lot of our technology is kind of built on that. We have to refresh it a lot for that same reason. Like, okay, ignore that one. Yes, this one we need to pay attention to, type of thing.
Yeah.
A big part of, I think, what people pay us for is that it's coming.
What I was doing with this book is really, I was aiming for 5 years ahead. Everything I'm describing can happen today. Like we have everything that it's all here. No one's put it together the right way yet that I've seen. I would say, here's a positive example. JP Morgan launched AI internally with 200,000 employees. That's impressive, and that's a great win. They figured out the guardrails, and that's great. That's a great case study. They're not dealing with identity, right, which is fine. And by the way, that also points to the fact that I would say if you're new or you're scared or whatever, I would probably start with an internal workflow first, right? I'd start you there. That way, if there's a problem or something embarrassing happens, the employees can laugh about it, and it's not a big deal. No one gets fired, and it's not the embarrassing Chevy Tahoe chatbot for $1 incident that happened, I think last year, was it?
Go into it. Explain it for those that haven't listened.
There was a guy who he was from Silicon Valley, so he was messing with it, and he got the chatbot to agree to sell him a Chevy chatbot, and he even said, "Is that a legally binding deal?" And the AI said, "Yes, it is. Of course it is." Why? Because they didn't give it any process. They just threw up some generic chatbot. And I'm letting you know right here, right now, you're playing with fire. If you think you can just like slap this together, this is not SaaS anymore. This is not a SaaS product you're just adding to your stack at all. This is transformation. This is infrastructure that needs to be built.
And the inputs and the outputs, like again, a lot of the ones from that Claude announcement, a lot of the stocks that were hit, financial, legal.
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, it highlight accountants and stuff like that, and it highlights just the reality of like, look, if your job is dealing with a repetitive process on publicly available data. So it's either a publicly available process that's replicable or publicly available data. Start looking for new things, not to do. I'm not saying you're going away, but your job is absolutely changing and changing dramatically. There is a ton of how do I incorporate this into it? I mean, and in a lot of senses, I go kind of good riddance. I don't want someone who's deploying the same process that existed 20 years ago. That is what that software eating the world from Andreessen Horowitz that was supposed to be taking place. I don't want people doing that drudgery. I want them solving new problems. If we really want to see kind of like, what is our pale blue dot that we call Earth capable of? It's like, well, we all need to be solving new problems, not just deploying a repetitive process. Not a good use of it.
Let's talk about change management for a second. You brought it up earlier. In change management, I think we have to think about employees in a different way. Where we have like the hangover from the industrial era. We're used to like your value is how fast you can fill out that Excel sheet or reply back to it. Like that's not the best use of humans, to be honest. Like we basically turn humans into robots and machines. Now maybe we can get back into critical thinking and strategic thinking. And it's not so much about AI taking your job as much as it's about managing the AI. But I think the human is responsible for the output, the result. Like they're still responsible for that, and it's going to be their system that they're going to build this on.
I mean, this is good news. You're going to be working as the conductor, the director, the curator. I don't know that there's anything that is like, for me, more inspiring that gets you out of bed than just going, like, I do something novel. I do something that's hard. I literally studied critical thinking skills, and I still do. I think it's one of the most useful skills anyone can learn. Just like even just go study fallacies and decision making.
I love logic. Logic is what the whole solution is based on.
And when you find it, and you have no idea how ridiculously useful it is in just everyday everything. You see so many people, like there was a data science contest locally here it was just years ago, and they were trying to think of a really big idea. I think I gave them the best one. I'm like, I don't want you to go detect the bots, the nefarious and the bad actors. I want you to go and notify and find the good people with bad arguments that just don't
Right.
realize they have flawed thinking, because I guarantee it's orders
Right.
of magnitude more dangerous than all of the bad actors on the planet right now, right? Like just all those people that don't realize they're doing a slippery slope fallacy, or just,
Yeah.
non
Yeah.
sequitur and comparing things that shouldn't be compared, or like correlation versus causation. Just
Right.
going, there
Right.
is so many mistakes being made right now. And I do think people are going to be deploying those AI, and they're going to get the question, how did you come to this conclusion? Because either something went
Absolutely.
really bad or good, and you want an answer in both. You want a good
So,
answer in both.
so this leads into what I wanted to talk about, which is like where my solutions sit. There's like at the bottom, there's the tools, there's the data layers. And as you move up, you move towards execution layers. And above that, you move into like identity and access and security, basically. But my solution sits upstream from all those. I think most companies have the bottom figured out sometimes if they're deep into it, unless they're starting out, this is a different story. But the data layer, the applications, the API, all that stuff, right? But above that, the access governance, you have solutions there too. And the thing about that, I think we talked about briefly, is that they're now giving a key card for the AI to enter, and that way that provides safety, because now it's not some rogue AI from somewhere else. It's your AI, and that way it's safe. But the problems that we still have so far that I haven't seen this addressed yet is that once they're inside, who's now regulating that AI? And it's a black box. So who's watching the watchers, right?
Yeah.
And so that's why I have behavioral governance. Like, what's the behavior? That's why I want that entering into that secured area with behavioral wrappers already in it. And that's basically what I focus on. So the behavioral governance answers like, is the agent allowed to say that, right? Or do
Sure.
that? It includes the constitutional charter, what the AI must never do, what it must always do, and what it must escalate. And then the sovereign canon is the voice and values. It's really the identity is a combination of the rules, but also like the personality, the values encoded in machine executable terms, of course, but
Like
the decision
brand
rights.
kit for the AI, right? It's
The
like
what?
the brand kit for the AI. It's
Exactly.
here's your mission, here's your vision, here's your values, here's your guardrails, here's how you present our logo and our that to the public,
and also proof and receipts along with it. But yeah, just like you have Canva, helps you. You set up the colors, and they have your brand guideline guardrails, and now you can design to your heart's desire and always be on brand. It's going to be very much like that, except it's dealing with messaging now and how we escalate or ladder down into messaging. And so these things are complementary. You need both. And right now, engineers can give AI a key card, access to databases and all that, but nobody can give it laws. And the laws are going to come from leadership, and that's going to be really critical.
That's always tricky to track them as well, right? Like, I mean, because a lot of those, you're used, to your point, you're used to the technical governance. It's easy to track if an API fired, right? It's easy to see if I got an answer or didn't get an answer. It's harder to know if I got an answer with negative sentiment or whatever else. Like we did a voice of the customer project. I mean, that was like 4-ish years ago, but they wanted to basically say, I want you to mine all of the feedback that we get in all of our customer reviews. And then our goal was to basically take every mention of a feature and then associate it with its positive or negative sentiment, and try to build a decision hierarchy and say, okay, these are the features they mentioned. And then here's how often it was a positive experience versus a negative experience. So they could start to figure out, like, again, kind of their messaging, talk about the things that were most positive, and now we're managing expectations and stuff. And I remember at the time looking at the feedback, and most of the review models for semantics were 15% positive, 15% negative, and everything else was mixed, quote unquote, mixed. And a lot of the answers that you get out of those LLMs now, they can give you an answer that almost you have to read, and almost even read between the lines to find out, wait a minute, good thing or bad thing? Because they always have generally they try to position things to a positive tone. They want to, they're deliberately and literally trained to be helpful. So oftentimes, and then simultaneously, they're also programmed to not give you an answer. They don't get to abstain, right? They're a teenager taking a quiz in school. They have to answer.
Well, let's talk about that. So now we're talking about Boolean logic, right? And it's a little nerdy, and maybe Dan can clarify, but let's not go too deep. But the point is, it's simple yes or no, yes or no, black and white.
Right? Yeah.
However, there's also null, and what's the other known? And those need to be leveraged because it gives the AI more dimension because it's probabilistic. And so that's also in the book. We need to have a path to a human, and we don't have that. It always, with yes or no, it feels like it has to answer, right? With these other paths, it allows it to be like, okay, I don't have an answer for this, and I'm not going to try. And that's also has to be encoded. And I think that's also part of what's missing. And to back up with what you were talking about earlier, like you're also getting into the style and taste problem, which is like, I think there's companies out there like, we would love to have that problem. I just want to get this thing to work. And Alan's talking about making it tasteful. Trust me, guys. Trust me. Website design was the same way. Eventually, it was IT, and then who did it move to? It moved to the design thinkers, right? And this is design thinking for AI right here. I'm trying to help us avoid those like 5 or 10 years of that madness and get right to like how it should be done the right way. So, but AI makes execution cheap. That doesn't make you better. It just makes everyone average at scale, right?
Yeah.
And that's called the taste process. So AI doesn't kill creativity, by the way. It commoditizes execution. When execution is cheap, judgment becomes expensive, the judgment part. And again, that's where hiring has to change. Hiring has to be about judgment, has to be about point of view, because taste becomes the bottleneck. Again, what does the director do on a set? It's also, he's saying yes or no to the actor or to the cameraman or to the production person about what glass should the actor hold. I studied with Jeffrey Tambor. If you watch Arrested Development, the father, there's always money in the banana stand. That guy, hilarious.
Love
great act. And I'd watch him on a stage, watch an actor or an actress walk on, action. They walk on, cut. And he'd do that for half an hour. They'd go on stage 30 times and never get it right. And then he'd have him sit down and have this discussion for 30 minutes about the decision, the motivation, and everything all tracked. And this is logic. This is also, it's always logic, right? Where's this person coming from?
Sure.
Why did they enter a room that way? Oh, he comes from that background, so why would he be doing this? If he's a rich kid, he's not going to know about this. He doesn't know what she's talking about, right? There's so many layers and layers of things that are happening. Well, what I just described is what I would do with your AI. You have a customer that you have seconds, right? I think Gary Vee was saying that you have 1 second now, right? In social media, 1 second, like the word that comes, the first word, yes, you have a second. And that's what we're dealing with. Like, if you're watching a live play, you don't get to reverse it. There's no redo. You have to get it right out of the gate. So taste is the discipline that knows when to kill something that works or that weakens you. And most companies don't even have that muscle. So they ship everything that AI produces because it's good enough. And I think good enough at scale is death by 1,000 cuts. And this is actually the second efficiency trap in marketing history, right? The first happened in the 1950s when scientific advertising nearly killed creativity by reducing everything to formulas. I mean, we still have some of that, and it does work. I'm not saying I'm against it, but it killed it back then because it was like an either or, and it has to be a blend. And back then, ads became efficient, measurable, and soul-crushingly boring. And so I think the creative revolution proved that logic without emotion is just expensive wallpaper, right? So AI-driven content threatens to do the same thing at an industrial scale. If you give AI a budget with no point of view, it will optimize for the average. It will sound like everybody else because it was trained on everyone else. And so my work is about encoding your point of view so that AI amplifies your distinctiveness instead of automating your invisibility.
I love that. There's nothing in the middle of the road but yellow lines and roadkill. So polarity. Go make it interesting. I wholeheartedly agree. I mean, it's amazing. And I still think a ton of people haven't noticed it because the AI generates good grammatically correct sentences.
Yeah.
But man, if you go look at any, like you go to Reddit threads and stuff like that and just someone posts and then someone right beneath them, AI slop, right? They're just like out there because you can only sound just so helpful where everyone just goes, hey, I know what this is looking like. And it's fatigue, which one of the reasons I actually was really happy to go, we could take the tech that we're working on. We could put this in, I mean, it's communication AI. So you could put it and deploy it in many spaces. I'm doing marketing. As soon as someone figures it out, it becomes, well, it's no longer novel. And so it's going to change and it's going to evolve and it's not going away.
I should say is that this system's agnostic. Like you're not stuck with Claude or OpenAI. Yeah, this system is yours and you can add it's modular. You can add whatever you need to. And so that's going to become important as well. But, we touched on the software, the SaaS thing that's going on, the meltdown. Well, that's going to change. And obviously now you can have your own custom SaaS internally. I mean, why are we logging into HubSpot anyways to give them all their information when we could just host it on our own server anyways, right? Like if you really think about it, like it sounds antiquated now, doesn't it? So that's going to start to happen. But again, you're still going to need systems to talk to this. You're going to need data to talk to data, right? Yep. You're going to need data lakes to talk to data lakes. And so if you have marketing, sales, and support not talking to each other, you're going to have these horrible collisions where a customer is going to have 3 different experiences and maybe even get pissed off because you promised me that. And this other thing said, it has no idea that there's 3 different bots. It doesn't know this. It's just a customer It's just experiencing it as a customer. This is customer experience 101, right?
People don't realize how bad could it be. And you go, no, like people have exponential emotional responses to surprise in both directions.
Right.
If you get a highly relevant surprise, you go through the car wash and they happen to give you like, hey, this is your favorite smell. Like, okay, I happen to like cigar smell. And they give it to you like, that is a good damn day. But if you call your cell phone company and they make you and they transfer you 3 times and none of those people transfer your history.
And you're starting over every single time.
When someone cuts you off in traffic, road rage is literally like, it isn't a big deal, but it is a surprise and people literally kill each other over it.
Absolutely.
That negative surprise blows people's minds and it costs money for real. And people now are really punishing brands, especially post-COVID. There was a 10-year advancement in digital and online behavior during COVID, just because even the people that didn't want to now had to use the internet. And now if you don't use their customer history, which they go, hey, I gave you permission to have my data, you better be using it, right? They will absolutely punish you. So, well, and the upside of those was a few years ago, but we analyzed a direct sales database for a company that sells CRMs for direct sales organizations. So they had a total of like 27 million salespersons and salespeople, both sides of the dyad in that CRM. And we went through and they were trying to help and see if you could help us optimize lead scoring and basically who to assign leads to type of stuff. How do we basically reduce the number of no's we hear? So we looked at like the amount of training that the salespeople went through. And we looked at like, what were the people that were better doing? Were they upselling? Were they selling more often or whatever? Guess what they were doing? They somehow basically just stumbled into people that had the same personalities that they did. They understand. You've ever seen that T-Mobile commercial where the lady calls in and you look at it and you're like, is that her twin? It looks like the same person calling the same person.
Okay. Oh, right. You're right.
It's that. If you can get those people on the phone and you can actually reduce the negative surprise of how to actually communicate. So like we found out like the people that were extroverts, and extroverts are using like 3 exclamation points and stuff like that. There's a way to identify extroverts just even by their word choice. So if you're tracking their audio logs and stuff, you can hear them. And we found out extroverts loved other extroverts. Good salespeople could be introverts, but they did the best with other introverts. Introverts and extroverts combined didn't really, it was a clash. It was just another clash.
Interesting.
We went, hey, the best thing you can do is instead of assigning round robin leads, you need to actually start looking for people with similarities and pair them together. And you will dramatically increase your conversion rate just because you remove that weird surprise of like, how do I talk to this person? We just hit it off. So the more they mirrored one another, the better experience they had. No additional incentives or sales to the thing. It was literally just those really good salespeople are really good at finding other people like them, and they sell the hell out of stuff because of it. It was crazy. It was absolutely crazy. And to your point, if you have that data on those people, you have the corpus, you have the Latin for body of text surrounding their preferences, how they talk, who they talk, what they purchase, what they should be interested in next. And yes, you will get dinged for not using it now, or handsomely rewarded for using it now.
And I'm saying you got to build a corpus for your own brand.
Oh yeah.
For your AI. Right. And then merge that information. But you always start with the point of view of the company. And then when you feed it the data, like customer data, then it interprets that through the filter of the brand, which I always create customer-centric brands anyway. So I'm always thinking about the customer first. That's why I named it the brand experience operating system and not the employee experience, although the employee experience is within brand experience as well. The book is called The Brand Experience AI Operating System. It's the complete architecture. It's 9 steps from chaos to competitive advantage. And I would say chapter 1 is all you need to understand the problem and also the thesis of my book. I'm going to give you a link so they can have a free download of it if they want to take a look. I think it will become very clear.
It really is worth checking out. It really is like one of those, we have slides in some of our decks for like how to pick a vendor. And you have a bunch of questions in there like, hey, how long would it take you to actually pull up the decision and reasoning from your AI type stuff? That I would go, hey, just so you know, if you want to talk to who really knows what they're talking about, those are the questions. That's how you're going to separate.
You had the same questions in your own intakes?
Oh, well, yeah. Well, I think it's one of those where I go, Allen's done it, because this is not stuff that you can't.
Coming from you, Dan, that means a lot because you're a really sharp guy.
Well, thank you. Tell everybody.
You know your stuff.
But thank you. No, it is one of those where I'm just like, because a lot of the stuff, like in full transparency on it, a lot of it I had experience, but never really thought about. You put a structure to it where I'm like, he's right on that.
Right.
And also it's difficult. And on that too, where I'm just like, it's still hard to solve a lot of these problems. Again, how do you get all the team on the same sheet of music? You have to sell them on the same tech that was developed for different purposes. Tracking governance, LLM observation is still very much.
Let me point something out. I saw this in a post and made me think. There was only 60 years from the Wright brothers to landing on the moon. 60 years. That's insane.
Yeah.
From Wright brothers, we're at the Wright brothers moment. Okay. So I'm going to predict the future. We're going to be on the moon with AI. And right now we're with Wright brothers. I don't know what that means, but that's probably a fair kind of representation of what could happen. Look, aviation's dangerous. And what do? We still fly. We don't say, oh no, we can't figure this out. We figured it out. We have systems. We have pilots. They learn aerodynamics. They understand flying is dangerous. It always has been and always will be. That's never going to stop, never going to change. You just deal with it. Flying in space is dangerous, but that's not going to stop us from exploring, right?
Yeah.
I don't even think AI is that dangerous. It's dangerous those two things I just described, right? So it's literally just making a decision you want to do this and then doing the work. And I think right now people don't know what the work really is. What does that mean? It's so tempting to buy these tools and just start going crazy and buying it like SaaS platforms. And you have to get that thinking out. And so chapter 1 shows you the collisions that are coming, and it's not hypothetical. It's happening now. Regulators, look, some of my partners are in the EU, so they're already dealing with this. So like they're just kind of like a time machine of what's coming to America. And I don't just mean because the government's going to regulate this eventually, and they will, because they have to. Right now, we're in a nice Goldilocks zone. We have to deal with it, but eventually, I'm saying it doesn't matter whether they ever regulate it or not. You want to regulate your AI because you want control. You don't want this thing flying, And this is happening now. And I think the rest of the book is the build, like how to create the constitutional charter, how to encode the brand voice into machine readable rules, and then how you create evidence packets so you have the receipts for every decision. Writing it was harder than I expected.
Seriously, kudos and hats off to you, because that is you have a more organized brain than I do. It's a tough, again, it is an operating system. There's many moving parts. You have to understand it on an abstract and a tactical level. And I can tell you, I don't know, I've only spoken to a handful of people that even got there. You're way ahead of me on it. So well done, sir.
No way. Come on, I don't believe that. Come on, really?
It's a tough thing to wrap your head around. I get to work with a lot of smart people, but I've had the luxury of touching a lot of sides of it. So I think simultaneously I got lucky in that sense, right? I'm not developing or writing the code, but I have written some and had to talk to a bunch of the people that were deploying it and figure out how to do it, and figure out in many cases, look, all the systems and the stuff that you've described are required if you're going to evolve it. So not even just keep it from going off the rails, but you're not getting better at something if you don't understand how it makes its decisions, right?
Yeah.
It's a requirement. So it's one of those, do you want to outperform? Because what we're seeing right now, there is a lot of people getting better just because we're raising the bar of what average is, right? Google's Nano Banana can mitigate the fact that I suck at Photoshop, but we have hit the level where it's okay, it looks like a photo every time now. What next? And it's all right, how do I make something novel and meaningful and relevant to my customer? And it's well, now everybody has Photoshop built in.
Yeah.
What do you do?
Now it's about what do you have to say, right? Yeah. What do you actually have to say?
Exactly. And for what it's worth, what some of the hardest things to fake are authenticity. Every brand would pay all the money in the universe to get there, and it's really, really, really hard to do. And consumers can spot it. Where do people look you up, find you?
nobledigital.com, allenmartinez.net, or the actual solution is bxaios.com, and you can go to /shadow-ledger, and there's actual assessment there to see where you land, kind of like what you were talking about, that assessment you give for vendors. This is an assessment for leadership. And I would say the first chapter is really for the CFO to open up the purse strings and really look at this like an investment, to create a line item in the budget, to take this seriously. There was a time when websites didn't have a line item in the budget. Now they do. Yeah. Think about it. Of course, you can have a website. Well, AI should be that way too.
Yeah, if you're a serious operator, seriously, give it a look. Awesome. Thank you, Allen. I appreciate you, sir.
Yeah, thanks for having me.